Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Gampy, with my co-host, Brandon, as always. Today, we're doing a waiver wire episode. So the season is literally around the corner. We've taken you through all the draft stuff. We're still doing drafts on YouTube, so you can watch all our drafts there. But this time, what we're going to do is walk you through who's sticking out to us as people you might want to pick up after your drafts this weekend. There's a lot of interesting names out there. Granted, we should mention that not all of these are going to stick. We're just keeping an eye on, okay, this is looking interesting in preseason camp, and we left out any ones that were like 50-50 if they actually keep that top spot. It's people that we actually feel pretty comfortable will start the season in that position. And there's a lot of names. I mean, Brandon, you have how many? Like 20-something names?
Something like that.
It's
maybe,
insane.
Yeah, 20-something.
Yeah, so there's plenty of people here that we're going to recommend that you should think about picking up. It doesn't mean, and I want to reiterate this because sometimes people take what we say, at gospel and are like, oh my God, should I drop this guy for this guy? Just take a look at them, compare it to your league rankings and everything, your team composition, see if it makes sense. Just because we're recommending them here does not mean they are an immediate pickup. If they are, we will say that they're an immediate pickup. If we don't,
now,
then
a lot of these guys also, you need a little bit of more. We need to see what happens, really. You
Yes.
They're waiver wire targets because you're not necessarily supposed to pick them up right now anyway.
Yeah, it's more like watch targets also. Like half of them are, you could probably pick them up and do pretty well. The other half are just place them on a watch list and keep an eye on what is happening out of camp. Okay, but let's get started with all the names. So you have a million. So how about you take us through like two of yours first?
Sure. I got two from the Anaheim Ducks right off the bat. Andre Koch is the first one that comes to mind. He's actually, in a lot of leagues, if I drafted, because we use IR plus slots, which I highly suggest. In a lot of leagues where we're using IR plus slots, I drafted Rantanen and Line A and all these guys that, are not, well, I guess Line A is now signed as of about 10 minutes ago, but Rantanen, as of this recording, is still not signed. So I have him on IR plus, and I'm looking at the waiver like, okay, who could I replace for the time being? And Kasha is the name that always seems to pop up for me. He's got top right wing to start almost certainly at this point, I think. And for some reason, it looks like he might not play top power play, but I assume they'll give him the shot there. His rates were pretty good last season. He shoots a lot. So I think he's got good upside as a late round grab. He's only 17% owned. So worth a look at the very least on a team that's, going to need something to happen from their young players. And he's the most developed young player pretty much besides Rax. Then another one over here is Max Comtois. He's 9% owned. It's kind of uncertain whether it's going to be him or Nick Ritchie up at that top left wing. It looks like it's been Ritchie lately, but I wouldn't be surprised to see, well, Rax could be up there as well. I mean, we don't really know, but as it's been lately, it's been Ricky Rax, which is Ricard Raquel, playing with Sam Steele, and the kind of top left wing flip-flopping between Comtois and Ritchie. Cuts aren't over, so Comtois could still get sent down or something, but I would assume at this point he's going to make the team, and I think he's going to get a shot at that top left wing. So he's somebody to keep on your mind, especially if he starts showing up on the top line or if he starts getting top power play time. He also does throw his body around a bit, so Bangers Leagues, he gets a bonus. Yep.
And for Nick Ritchie, that's another guy that actually I like quite a bit. He's left wing right now, slated to start the season on the top left wing over Max Comtois. So he's someone who's interesting to me, especially in Bangers Leagues. He's 3% owned. An interesting candidate just because of his deployment on that top line. I like it quite a bit. He's one of those guys too, though, that doesn't get that many points. That's the only thing, is he's not really a point getter. Think of him more, I think, as like a Tom Wilson on that Getzlaf line, and just throws the body around, will get you pims, will take shots, but not necessarily a huge point getter. So that's he's mostly just a peripheral guy to pick up. But of course, there's the off nights, which help a lot, and he is, a top line guy, which makes him interesting. Keeping that same vein on top line guys, I'm going to go to Rope Hintz, one of the higher owned guys that we have on this list, of 41% owned, a center left wing. He's playing top line right now with Seguin and Radulov, but what I like the most is that the coach came out and said, went out of his way to say this year Rope Hintz will be a top 6 guy for us. So whether he's on a line with Seguin or Radulov, otherwise he's going to be on a line with Ben and Pavelski. So either way, I see Hintz's situation is really, really solid. And right now he's second power play, but that could very easily change.
Yeah, I've actually got Hintz in my Dynasty League, so I'm hoping for the best with him as far as deployment.
You have Hintz in your league because I traded him to you for Bjorkstrand, and now I'm regretting it.
You sure did. So I'm hoping for the best for him. But yeah, I do think he's going to struggle to get that top power play, but we'll see.
Yep.
All right, moving on. The next one I got here is fairly highly owned, I guess, at 27%, and Tyler Johnson. It looks like with Point out for the first month or so, he's currently looking to be playing with Stamkos and Kucherov, which would be a crazy start for him. I still think it's a short-term play. It seems like every season Johnson shows up as a waiver wire material for like a month or two. I guess his month is earlier this season. So I'm beyond, I don't think there's much else going on in Tampa, but as I know Cirelli, people might want us to talk about Cirelli a little bit, but personally, since Point signed, I don't know.
Even in the short term, I don't really like that second line I don't think Cirelli is equal to Point. Like, just because Point did well in that situation, I don't think that's the same thing for Cirelli. I like Tyler Johnson way more.
He needs to get Kucherov on his wing if you wanted him to be interesting. So exactly. You could watch him if they do split up Stamkos and Kucherov winds up on Cirelli's wing, then yeah, he might have a little bit of value for a while there. Yeah. But right now it's Tyler Johnson's show.
Yeah. Another guy, especially in very deep leagues on Tampa, actually, one other guy that I like is Patrick Maroon. Now, I know Patrick Maroon, the slowest skater of life. He looks like he's always in mud, but he's a left wing, right wing, 5% owned. He's currently on the top power play. Third line top power play, so you're not going to get many even strength points, most likely, but you are looking at a pretty damn good power play. And the thing, too, with him is that he's good at one thing only, and that's pretty much shooting the puck and scoring goals. And so having a guy like either Stamkos or Kucherov dishing you the puck, or even Hedman, like, there's a good chance that he can score quite a few goals on that top power play. I like him in the short term. Off his butt. I like him right now in the short term. Probably not a long-term ad, but just somebody right now, especially to either watch or in super deep leagues, start to think about if he's on that top power play.
I'm going to jump over to Arizona for a second and talk about Lawson Krause very briefly. Now, he's 36% owned, and most of his value comes from hits, to be fair. But he can get points. I don't expect him to get many. I think his kind of best case scenario is winding up as like a very poor man's Tom Wilson, except at left wing. He'll get you a bunch of hits. He'll get you okay amount of shots, and I think he'll cap out at like 40 points or something. But that's like a ceiling. I think more realistically, you'll see him around 30. But he puts up one of the highest hit totals that you'll see in the entire league. So there's that, and he's been floating around the lines. So the higher he goes up in the lines, obviously better for ice time, also better for production, and he actually gets some power play time. So he's worth a look. 36% owned is pretty high, but and he is mostly a specialist. So you have to bear that in mind as well. That he's gonna probably, especially if you don't count hits, then he doesn't even matter at all. But he's it's not completely one note, but yeah, hits. If you're not lacking hits, you don't need him, basically.
Yeah. Also on the Arizona Coyotes is Derek Stepan, center, 11% owned. It looks like right now that they're going to be going with Clayton Keller, Derek Stepan, and Phil Kessel as that top line. Not entirely surprising. I think that was the safest move they could do for now, while they kind of figure everything else out. If they wanted to try Schmaltz up there or whatnot, that was, I think, the smartest, safest move just for now. But you're looking at Derek Stepan getting a pretty good opportunity on that top line with Phil Kessel and Clayton Keller on either side. So he's an interesting option to pay attention to. I don't know how well that line in general is going to do. They may be slow to start. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend Stepan as an immediate ad. It's more just, I think, someone to watch and pay attention to what happens on that line, because I think that line especially could also be very, very fluid as the season goes.
Yep. One other guy I'll mention over there is Jacob Chikrin. I didn't actually check his ownership, but it's always low. So, lowish. He's probably going to wind up paired on the top power play, which is not the best in general for a power play, but it's good news for him. He's worth looking at. I wouldn't add him now in most leagues, but worth a look.
Yep.
After that, let's head over to Buffalo, and we've got Victor Olofsson, who's got to be on the top of everybody's charts at this point for a waiver wire candidate. He's been playing with Eichel and Sam Reinhart, and is basically picked up right where he left off, doing very well, both on top power play and on top line. So he could be, I don't know if I would call him the Elias Lindholm of this season, but he's definitely got a lot of upside. He's in the position that Lindholm had where he took off last season, in a way. He's also got left wing, right wing for those positional leagues. So a little bit of flexibility there.
Sticking in that Metro division. Actually, they're not in the Metro division. Let's go over to the Metro division. I forgot the Buffalo's in the Atlantic. Moving over to Metro, let's talk about Pavel Buchnevich. Right wing, 19%. Top line right now with Panarin. In my opinion, it's Buchnevich's to lose. I know there's a lot of Kako hype, but from everything that Quinn has said, David Quinn on the Rangers, for everything he said, it seems like Buchnevich is going to be top wing, and it's his to lose. Another really nice thing is the Rangers have one of the teams with the most off nights this year, so they're a pretty interesting option. And especially for those positional leagues, right wing seems to be a little bit weaker than left wing this year. So that's another opportunity there. He doesn't shoot very much. So really it's just a points guy. If you're looking at just a points league, that's where he gets even more interesting. In a bangers league, it's a little hard to justify him over a lot of guys simply because he doesn't really shoot. All he really does is get points, and he's not on the top power play. He's on the second power play. So that also diminishes his value a little bit. So I'd look at him solely more as a point getter and not really look at him too hard if you're in a peripherals league.
All right, let's head over to Chicago. Let's just bounce all over the place a little bit. Let's head over to Chicago for a minute and talk about Alex Nylander, who I think he's 4% owned. He's currently playing with Tays. Now Kane has swapped back and forth from the top right wing to the second right wing. I would assume they're going to play with Tays again. He saw such success, and Strome was doing just fine with only DeBrincat on his wing. So the idea of having Nylander in that top left wing is actually a reasonable one. Now the question is, does he actually make the team? And if he does, how long is he going to be there? Those are like the unknowns, but if he's playing top left wing, I think he's worth an ad until he's not doing it anymore, basically, which I think will come eventually. Yeah,
he's interesting, especially on the top line. I mean, the problem is that last year we did see a lot of guys kind of fluctuate between that top line. Like we saw Saad up there for a little bit, and no one really did anything aside from Kane and Tays. So that's my one worry there, is that just because you're on Kane and Tays' line does not really necessarily mean you're going to get points. We saw that last year where the guys up there didn't necessarily get the most points. So I'd be a little hesitant to reach for Nylander. I think what I'd want to see is I'd want to see a few real season games. I'm not sure if he'll stick there, for one, and two, I want to see how he actually meshes with them, because there's a chance that he meshes in such a way that all it really is just good chemistry, but he doesn't really factor into a lot of the points.
All right, I'll take one more over in the Metro again, all over the place, but I'm actually going alphabetically, sort of. So the next one on the Columbus Blue Jackets is Nick Foligno.
Yep.
So it was mentioned that he was going to start the season top left wing, but now we've seen Tessier up there. So this is going to depend on who actually winds up top left wing. If it is in fact Foligno, he obviously brings that extra grit to standard Yahoo leagues with hits, and to any leagues with hits, really. So he has a little bit of extra oomph, I guess. I don't know that he's going to get top power play, but top line is probably enough for me to be looking his way as a waiver wire target. He's only 7% owned, so I really don't mind. I personally have actually picked him up in a couple of leagues, and I think that he's at least worth having on your watch list in case, because we've actually seen him have good seasons before when given an opportunity. So worth a shot anyway to have on your watch list.
Yeah, worth mentioning there too, Alex Tessier, center left wing, 9% owned. He also may get a shot at that top left wing spot. He's kind of who's, I think, up in the air. It's between, I think, Foligno or Tessier, and it's quite a big difference, because it's either going to be first line or third line, most likely, depending on which one they are. I have a feeling, my feeling is it goes to Tessier just because of the way the lines are shaping up. That third line would most likely, the third line seems more like a checking line, sort of. It seems to be more right now. I think it's Foligno and Anderson and Jenner I think, is that line. So it'd make more sense, I think, to have Foligno on there and make it a little bit more of a checking line, and then put Tessier on the top line and make it more of an attacking scoring line. But who knows? Maybe they want a little bit of a change up, right? You have one guy who's more of a checking guy on the top line, then you have one guy who's more of a scoring line on that third checking line.
We have seen that format in a lot of teams, that like big body, the Tom Wilson type on the top line. I mean, it looks like Edmonton's trying it with Cassian, who's on this list later. And it seems like I don't know, maybe it'll work for him. We'll see.
Potentially. But,
if they try it.
What we saw last year was we saw the PLD line get a ton of offensive zone starts. And so I would assume that Torts wants to do the same thing this year. And for that reason, I think Tessier fits that mold a little bit better. So I think Tessier will be the one to get the top line. But the problem is, I don't think he's going to get top power play. So his upside is pretty limited because of that.
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed when filling this out, and this is probably not too surprising, is that a lot of the players on this list that I've built come from the worst teams in the league, which makes sense because that means there's a lot more flexibility. There's a lot more opportunity. That's a big opportunity is the key, right? To have your young or lesser known players be able to make an impact. You're not going to get that if you have your top, 5 locked out or whatever. So Detroit, I have got 4 people from Detroit on this list. I'm going to start at the top from the most owned to the least. The most owned player is Andreas Athanasiou at 36%. Now, the funny thing is, I'm not the most interested in him. I think that he's got a good future. I don't know that it's this season that it all kind of takes off for him. I would think I would rather have my second on the list here, who's just below him, 35% owned, Tyler Bertuzzi.
Yep.
Tyler Bertuzzi, left wing, right wing, top line, top power play, gets a bunch of PIMs. So if you need that, by the way, there actually is dual eligibility in Athanasiou too at center left wing. So he's got a little bit of bonus there, and he shoots more. So Bertuzzi's PIMs, better opportunity to get points, but I think the actual scoring upside goes to Athanasiou. It's just a matter of, I think Bertuzzi's in a better position. If they had swapped, if you'd seen Athanasiou on the top line, I would be more in on him, definitely more in on him, but not the case yet. And then the next 2 are defensemen, and there's basically a 3-horse race for top power play right now in Detroit between Mike Green, Philip Hronik, and Dennis Chalowski. It looks like they were trying Chalowski in the last preseason match. What I have come to understand is it seems like Hronik's going to get it, or Mike Green, but I don't know. And now that they're trying with Chalowski, it's any man's game. So I think the right answer, I have Hronik in a few leagues. I'm basically just going to hang on to him. But if I see he's not playing the top power play, I'm not going to feel bad about dropping him. He's a guy you can get super late. Again, 27% owned. He's like a waiver wire target anyway. So if you're looking for a top power play guy, it's worth a shot to take one of them. Even like Mike Green, as kind of boring as he is fairly effective from a point perspective when he is playing. He's not great, but he usually paces above 40 points, which is enough, I guess, if you're getting power play points to back it up. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity on Detroit for somebody to break out. And that's not even counting Mantha and Larkin, who are obviously not waiver wire candidates.
Yeah. Guys who we've talked about ad nauseum. I mean, I like Bertuzzi, I think the best of the ones you said. Right. Top line, top power play. He's really good. He's an actually really good real life player as well. And for that reason, like, I don't think he's going to really fall off of that top line or top power play. So I'm high on Bertuzzi this year as well. Going back over to the Metro really quick. Let's go to the Islanders, who's your team. You may not like this one, but I kind of like Jordan Eberle a little bit. Right wing, 35% owned. He's going to be top line, top power play next to Barzal and Anders Lee. So it's an interesting situation. He did well last year, decently well last year when he was in that situation. And I don't hate him as a little bit of a flyer. I like him quite a bit, especially in deeper leagues. It's not often that you can find top line, top power play guys on teams that should, in theory, produce a lot of offense. Like that line of Anders Lee, Matthew Barzal, and Jordan Eberle should be good in theory. But again, that's the whole problem, is in theory it should be good, not necessarily that it is. That's kind of what we saw last year, was they struggle a lot on offense. Nonetheless, I think Eberle is one of those guys too that flies under the radar a lot, and you can probably sit on and just wait and see how he does and see how that line clicks. Trotz isn't that huge on changing lines, if I'm correct. So I feel like we're going to see that top line stick for at least a week or two, maybe a little bit longer than that, before he really switches anything up. So I think that if anything right now, if you really needed a right wing, Jordan Eberle is an interesting option that will be on what should be a successful team on that top wing. The other guy that I wanted to talk about that's also a right wing is from Toronto, and that's Kasperi Kapanen.
You like Kapanen over Janssen?
I think so.
I don't know, man.
No, to be fair, I have them both on my list.
Okay,
here.
yeah.
I have both Kasperi Kapanen and Janssen. Janssen is left wing, right wing. Kasperi Kapanen's only a right wing. Kapanen's at 31%. Janssen's at 40%. So it seems right now, and perhaps maybe my data here is outdated from what I was looking at on the Leafs combinations, but it looks like Kapanen will be playing with Tavares and Marner. Janssen will be playing with Matthews and Nylander. Janssen is top power play though, which changes a lot of things. So that makes me like Janssen more. That being said, I think I like the Kapanen, Tavares, Marner 5-on-5 line more.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So
it really comes down to, I guess, what you're looking at in terms of points. Like I like the Kapanen, Tavares, Marner line more at even strength. I like Janssen more if you count power play points. If you don't count power play points and are only looking at points, I maybe would like Kapanen more, but then the left wing, right wing for Janssen would sway me yet again towards Janssen. But I think it's pretty even for the most part. But I do agree. I think I'd take Janssen over Kapanen. But those are the two right now that are low enough on the Leafs, and they're really, really interesting. They're probably the last interesting players on the Leafs that weren't drafted in your league.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I like them quite a bit, especially they're an interesting pickup, and especially now that we're seeing the Matthews-Nylander connection kind of rekindle, Janssen getting in on that could be huge.
All right, so I'm going to go to Edmonton here. I've got a few from here too. Edmonton.
Ethan Bear.
Oh God, let's not talk about him. I'm going to start with Zach Kassian at 6%. Now, I feel like you have to be in a special type of league for him to matter. You're not going to get power play points. He's going to get a bunch of hits. He's going to get a decent amount of PIMs. He's not going to get a ton of shots. It's basically all you're getting out of Zach Kassian is what you already had, plus possibly a little bit of point upside. But I wouldn't bet too much more on that. At 6%, he's like 6% owned is probably about right. Like I think you need to be in a PIMs league and a hits league for him to matter. And even then, he's like just on the outside looking in. A guy to pay attention to if he's able to click with either one of Draisaitl or McDavid to some extent. If he's able to, deflect some pucks in or whatever, or even if just the increased ice time positively affects his peripherals, that's probably good enough to make him rosterable in some leagues. The next option here is James Neal at 19%. Now, I would not take him if he stays on the second line, especially if he stays on the second power play. However, if they decide they're tired of Zach Kassian at the top line and they give Neal a shot, I do think he's their best winger, which is sad. Like who else is better than James Neal on Edmonton? That's strictly a winger. Like I get Draisaitl, but he plays center really. I get Nugent Hopkins, but he's plays center really. So there's just not a lot of options elsewhere. So with James Neal, if he gets that top line right wing, which I think they're going to try at some point, right? They must, especially if they give him that and top power play. I think he becomes rosterable for however long that happens, unless he just can't do anything with it.
Yep.
And then lastly, I'll let you mention it. Even though he's hurt right now, who's your guy?
Joel Persson.
Yep. He's 0% owned. But
wait, so am I the only person that owns Joel Persson?
You might. No, I doubt you're the only one. There's probably some other people that listen to us for some stupid reason, but if he becomes healthy ever again, he will likely get a shot at top power play. And that's it. That's the reason to be paying attention to him in case Edmonton can finally find somebody to QB that top power play.
What's interesting too with Joel Persson is he's slated to be top pairing and top power play. So he's playing with Clefbaum and on the top power play. So that's what makes him most interesting to me is that, remember before I'd said about Joel Persson, well, I don't know if he's going to get good 5-on-5 deployment, but it seems like he will. So he's someone to watch, see if he can actually win that spot once he gets back from injury. His chances... I'd say his chances haven't necessarily gone down because it seems that his competition is Ethan Bear. And I think he can beat out Ethan Bear pretty handedly, simply because he's older, has more experience. For that reason, I think he's pretty solid in terms of coming back, and I think he has a good shot at winning it back once he's not injured. But I do like Patterson quite a bit. Okay, moving over to Vancouver. Let's talk about JT Miller and Michael Furland. So Furland is left wing, right wing, 17%. I didn't look up JT Miller's percentage. My bad on that. But it seems like JT Miller is going to be playing. Yeah, I think. I'm not sure if I like it though. JT Miller is going to be playing most likely with Tanner Pearson and Bo Horvat, which is going to be a shutdown line most likely.
61% owned.
Oh my God, that is high. Anyways, so JT Miller is most likely going to be playing with Horvat and Pearson, which is going to be Pearson. I keep thinking about Joel Pearson. Can't stop. That's most likely going to be more of a shutdown line, more defensive zone starts. Not great for Miller. Whereas Furland's going to be playing most likely with Pettersson and Besser at 5-on-5. Now, what gets a little bit funky is Daily Faceoff right now, at least, says that, well, right now they say Furland's not on any power play, which I don't. They have Louis Eriksson over Furland on a power play. That's not going to happen. But I think that what will happen is I think we'll see Furland be top power play as well, because they're playing Besser and Pettersson on the top power play along with Quinn Hughes and Berchi. But I think that there's room there for either Furland to take over from Berchi, or he can kind of slot in and they can keep that entire line together. Because on that second power play unit, they have Horvat and Pearson. So I think it makes more sense to keep JT Miller with Horvat and Pearson all the way down to the power play and keep Furland with Besser and Pettersson all the way down to the power play than to all of a sudden switch that up. So that's what I think. That's my thought. But even if not, I'd rather have, and maybe this is a hot take, I'd rather have Furland at 5-on-5 playing with Pettersson and Besser than JT Miller playing with Pearson and Horvat but being on top power play.
Yeah, I'd agree, especially in hits leagues.
Yeah, especially
JT
in hits
Miller,
leagues.
His peripherals are terrible.
Awful.
But
and also, like, if he just gets points on the power play but he's on a shutdown line, you're not looking at many points. Sure, you might get some power play points, but he's going to hurt you in normal points.
So my next one, I don't know. I feel like maybe this is a hot take. It shouldn't be, though. Over in LA, Ilya Kovalchuk. Ooh. He's 7% owned. He's left wing, right wing, and he was actually pretty good. Like, not great, but rosterable before Willie D took over. He had a decent October last season, and then ice time drop, third line stuff, lost top power play here and there. They clearly didn't mesh. Now, I don't know if he's going to be like an elite player or anything, but at 7% owned, I think he's worth a shot, especially if he gets top line, top power play, which may happen at some point, because I don't buy Iafallo. I still don't understand why he's top left wing. If you put Kovalchuk up there, at least you have a perceived offensive threat, right? Like that's why he's on the team. So, and then you can pair, get that chemistry going between Kopitar and probably Dustin Brown, I assume, will stay top right wing. So the three of them and Kovalchuk, and move that over to the top power play as well. So he's a guy I'm keeping an eye on. I don't own him in any leagues. He's a free agent in all the leagues I'm in, but he's a guy that's on my mind at least.
Yes. I mean, he's a guy who also shoots a ton, can put the puck in the back of the net. Like, he's a valuable asset in fantasy when he's hot. The question
he was like
is, will he
7th or 8th round pick last season?
Yeah, like I mean, it'll be curious to see if he can turn it on, see if he'll get the opportunities, and if he does, he could be valuable. I mean, goal scorers like him are rare.
Yep. I'm also going to move over to Ottawa here. Now, surprisingly, I only really have one guy to mention here, and that's Drake Batherson. And that's just because, I mean, yeah, there's other guys that are top power plays, other guys that have good line time, like Colin White. I still just can't even think about it. Batherson, we've at least seen glimpses of good play. He's center right wing. He's 3% owned. He hasn't officially made the team yet, but I assume he will. And I think he's going to get at least a shot on that top right wing at some point, and will be top power play, I would also assume. So, and because there's just nothing, like, who else do they have on this team? They're probably going to give him decent minutes also right out the gate. So I think he could be pretty interesting this season, to say the least, especially at 3% owned. I'm surprised it's that low, actually.
No,
you don't like him?
No, I hate anything Ottawa that's not called Brady Tkachuk or Thomas Chabot. I can't get behind it. It's just, they're so bad. They're so bad. It's like, I know it's like a running joke, and it's, people might get annoyed eventually of us saying that, but it's genuine how bad they are. It's pretty brutal. I think over a 82 game season, they're going to get demolished. Okay, let's forget about the bad taste. Drake Batherson.
I still like Batherson.
Yeah, you do.
I've been trying to trade for him in Dynasty for months. It's just not happening.
Oh.
The guy who owns him is, I guess, grew up in the same city, so that's just in the drink now.
Such a bad reason to keep players in fantasy. So I want to go to a defense, and this is solely for Bangers leagues. Radko Gudas, 22% owned. Maybe he's already owned in your Bangers league, and that's why he's so highly owned. But he's someone to pay attention to, especially if you have blocks, because what happens is Washington has a second most off nights. So he's a really, really interesting option to run in. As essentially a streamer. Like if you have a 50, he can almost always slot in because of his off nights. And so you're pretty much guaranteeing to get one of the best kind of PIM, block, and hit guys stat coverage wise on those off nights. And it's a huge, huge ad in those leagues for your peripherals. So Radko Gudas to me is a guy that I'd 100% think about adding in a hits, blocks, and PIMs league. So I'd take a look, see if he's there. Not necessarily a must-add guy, but if you're a team especially that's struggling with peripherals, he's a huge ad for you.
I would never call anybody a must-add guy. I hate that term. I think it's probably the most overused term in fantasy, advice stuff.
Agreed. Must-add is weird.
Must rosterable. It's like, don't do that.
It's the same thing as like calling a guy like a must-pick number one. It's very rare that a guy is a must-pick number one just because the league settings change so much and roster ability and how many centers are you forward only. Yeah, there's so many variables. We try to stick to just saying, hey, here's this guy that might be interesting. Now be smart and go apply it with your logic to your league.
I mean, yeah, you could be in a league that literally only tracks plus minus. So really, you can't ever call somebody definitely a must add, but whatever. Okay, moving on. Enough of that mini rant. My next one over here is actually I've got three in Pittsburgh, starting with Dominic Cahoon at 4%. It looks like he might be starting the season top right wing with Crosby. I assume like that sounds like just about the best, or left wing, I guess it doesn't matter. Gensel will take whichever other one, but that sounds like just about the best winger they've put up there. Like you could make arguments for Brian Russ, but he's kind of just fast. I think Cahoon actually has more skill. So I do like that concept. I think he's definitely somebody to be paying attention to. At 4% owned, like he's widely available. He's left wing, right wing. So I really like him to at least to keep an eye on. I actually just picked him up, but then Line A signed, so I dropped him. But he's definitely like one of my top ads that I'm thinking about. Yep. In that same vein, Alex Galchenyuk, now he's 50%, so he's probably not really worth talking about, but playing with Malkin, probably top power play, probably. That's just like enough right there. If those things happen, then he's in good shape. Yep. And the last one I'm going to mention here is Justin Schultz at 25%. Now they've done a few things on the power play in preseason, which I didn't expect. One was they tried two defensemen on the top power play. That was Letang and Schultz, which I can't imagine they actually do, but they experimented with it apparently. Another one that actually happened was Letang played power play 2 for a little bit, and they let Schultz take power play 1, which did happen a few years ago. Now, there's no way I actually think that'll happen long term, but it's enough for me to be like, okay, I should at least be thinking that Justin Schultz might have something happen to him this season. So he's like on the back of my mind. I don't necessarily expect myself to pick him up or for him to really be worth it, but if they do any funky stuff with the top power play, and they obviously lost Kessel, so they are playing with it, he's an interesting option. That
phrase, Justin Schultz might do something this year, is literally what we've said for the past 4 years about Justin Schultz. That's like true. His motto. His motto is Justin Schultz might do something. Ever since he joined the league, really, it's been like his personal mantra. I might do something this year. And then everybody's like, he might, and then he doesn't. And then he gets picked up and everyone gets excited. And it's like, oh, wait, right. No, that's Justin Schultz. Okay, no wonder. Moving on from Justin Schultz, I have two more guys here. Don't you own him
in the Dynasty League?
Shh. I don't want to talk to you. Okay, Wade Simmons. Wade Simmons, right wing, 48% owned. Forget about my Dynasty League. 48% owned, very high, but he is someone to pay attention to. He is second line top power play at the moment. Seems like they're trying to keep Gusev and Hughes together, which means Simmons will be on that top power play. So I think of him as a how do I put this? He's pretty much a Kadri light, I think. Kadri light with a lot more age and just not as great.
A lot more PIMs too, probably.
But a lot more PIMs, a lot more peripherals. So especially in a Bangers league, he's worth it. But even then, there's two completely opposite sides on Wayne Simmons on like Twitter and everywhere. People are either in love with Wayne Simmons and think this is a bounce back year, or they think he's like the devil and sucks, like Jake Allen. Like that's pretty much the two opposite
He's a suck
ends
devil.
of him. Yeah, like he's one of those two. I think he's more in the middle, and people need to like calm down on both sides and just say, you know what, Wayne Simmons is going to be fine this year in his current deployment, especially if he can keep top 6 and top power play. Like he'll be fine. So yeah, that's my take on Simmons. My next guy is going to be a center, a 1% owned guy, believe it or not. Brandon's going to love this one. Luke Kunin on the Wild. I like the second line he's on with Zuccarello. It's going to most likely. Only? Yes, center only. He's going to be. Weird. This is for really deep leagues.
Some wing.
Yes. So he's going to be centering the second line most likely. He's interesting to me because I think that second line is going to be very right wing, offensive. You liar. Is he really?
You.
Oh, yeah. I thought he was only center. Okay. Anyway, center right wing makes it even better. So the interesting thing with him is that, like I said, he's going to be most likely a very, very offensive line with Zuccarello, which is good for him. And could lead to some sheltered offensive minutes, probably second power play. So not any power play points, but that second line deployment with very offensive minutes could be good for him. And as a 1% guy in a very deep league, he potentially could be something.
Yep. I agree with that. I've got one left, and that's Jaden Schwartz in St. Louis. 38% left wing only. Now he's been underperforming for a couple of seasons now, although we did see him resurge a little bit towards the end of last season and throughout the playoffs. So the hope is there, right? That he'll be able to do something on the top line, top power play. And that's it. Like there's something to look forward to with Schwartz if he can stay healthy and continue to shoot the puck and score goals, but we'll see. Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go. That is the Waiver Wire Targets episode. Next up, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be walking you through right before we do our in-season content, which we're so excited for. It's right around the corner. Almost there. We've done a lot this offseason, but there's one last thing we want to do, and we're going to walk you through how our drafts went, what we learned, and we're also going to walk through our player stocks. So what players did we take a lot of stock in? Where did we pick them on average? That sort of thing, and kind of a recap of draft season, if you will. So we're really excited to do that, and then after that, we'll start the in-season coverage. So there you go. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
Yep. Thanks for listening.